Howdy YouTube, Eznix here with a video update of the EznixOS project. If you've been tracking the Sourceforge and OSDN.net download project pages, you would have noticed over the past couple weeks several ISOs uploaded, then taken down, then uploaded again, then taken down, then uploaded again. I'm very sorry about that. The Bookworm release of Debian has been a little more involved for me. I'm finding I had forgotten a number of things, decided the installer issue a couple times between the Debian installer and the Calamares installer. I think I've finally settled on the Calamares installer going forward. So that is the current ISO up, dated today, 6/22/2023. So I built the ISOs last night. I've been testing them, and I'm relatively happy with the new format. The build file script that I use has gone through a bunch of revisions. And as I've found files that were not included in Debian's recommends dependencies to have to adjust to, the Bookworm release has been a little more problematic, especially the latest file crypt setup init ramfs not being included by default without specifying it specifically. So there are other issues. Most of them are my own lack of paying enough attention to what I'm doing, but I think I've finally worked out all the little gotchas. So it's released. EznixOS based on Debian 12 Bookworm. The Sourceforge page is before you. In files is EznixOS12 and EznixOS11. I rebuilt the now old stable Debian Bullseye with the same installer choice, Calamares, as opposed to Debian installer, and the same software as much as possible as the 12 release. So Debian EznixOS 11 and 12 should have the same software setup. Slightly different theming choices for the desktop and only available with Xfce. No more KDE edition. So if we go into EznixOS 12, there's an ISO, there's a tar file with all the build files in it, and the MD5 sum. I did upload a README. It's the same README with most of the bits corrected for the number change, except right here at the top. Didn't upload a new README just to fix 11 to 12. Forgive me. Let's see, what else? The OSDN.net page is also up to date. I've uploaded all the screenshots as well. Same 3 files available for both releases. Now over here, I do have the EznixOS 12 up and ready to boot. So let's go ahead and do that. Now this is in VirtualBox with EFI enabled. I noticed VirtualBox EFI is giving the Debian installer a bunch of fits. Even on Debian's own ISOs, I was not able to get the installer to launch with VirtualBox with EFI enabled. Now let's go ahead and change the display settings so we have a bigger display for y'all. So the wallpaper choice out of the box is the Debian's own wallpaper. That a little bigger. However, if you want my wallpapers, they are just a couple clicks away in backgrounds. And then you get all my nature shots, as well as that. So we have the Debian installer, well, the Calamares installer on the desktop. We have my own selection of software, my own theme choices, icon choices, and layout choices. Just briefly, what's changed in accessories, there is now KeePass Xfce, or a way to manage, create, and store your passwords securely. Anything else new? SM Player has been around as a default for a while now. Audacious for music. The full LibreOffice suite. Under System, the Easy Admin tool is available. HTOP, let's see what HTOP is going to tell us. Yeah, quite a bit of memory use there. Let's see what else is new here. Time shift, I included time shift out of the box for those people who want to use it. Synaptic is here for package management. ZuluCrypt is here if you want to create your own encrypted folders and drives. And that's about it for newness. Everything else has been around for quite a while in my default installations. Let's go ahead and run the installer. Now I noticed this, it doesn't mark the icon on the desktop as executable. I find that a little weird, but if you just mark executable, it will launch. One reason I went with the Calamares installer over the Debian installer is the ability to easily theme it. You can see that. Also, let's get into some of the settings here. The EznixOS build files are all available right in the user's home folder. So that's always available for people, and this will be on the installed system as well. So let's go into the Calamares settings here and into the modules. Now these are the modules I use to run Calamares on the live system. One thing I have done is, let's see, change the FS tab defaults. Now I do this for my Easy Archer as well, set up the FS tab the same way. I usually use ext4. I like having defaults, no A time, and no discard enabled as mount options. For BTRFS, I like the same options, but I also add in no auto defrag. For swap, I just want defaults. And then for any SSD installs for BTRFS, it adds the SSD option. And then it sets up tempfs options as well. The reason I go with no discard is I don't feel for a desktop discard always enabled makes much sense, especially for SSDs. You're constantly writing to that SSD uh, or running a discard operation, which in turn increases the write count. So I prefer a no discard option and instead run or make sure it's set up in the systemd services the fstrim timer. fstrim runs the fstrim, runs a trim command periodically. I think it's once a week. And this, in effect, does your discard operation. I find that a much more reasonable option for a desktop computer. Maybe in industrial settings, corporate network, high availability settings, they want discard running all the time. I don't think on a desktop it's really that necessary or even appropriate. So that's another reason why I chose to go with Calamares installer, because it allows me to easily make these choices depending on how I want my system set up. Under the mount options, it also allows me to provide a broken down or more usable setup for BTRFS mount, subvolume creation, which Debian installer doesn't do. Debian installer simply gives you one big root subvolume, whereas if you use Calamares installer, especially with the newer version of Calamares in Debian 12, you do have the ability to create the subvolume mount points here. Now in EznixOS11, based on Bullseye, the older version of Calamares does not do the mount options. So that's something to be aware of. Let's go ahead and click Next. The region selection has to be done manually. I did not set this up to auto-detect region. It should default to US English. That should also be changed if necessary. Keyboard should be default. Let's go with erase disk, swap no hibernate, BTRFS. You'll notice I give a choice here. This choice does not exist in the earlier version of Calamares with Debian 11 or EznixOS 11. Give it a name, a very easy password, and start the installer. Now you'll excuse me if I get a drink for my dry throat here. I guess I could have started the installer while I was talking about all the Calamares options I wound up setting here. But I didn't think of that. So now I have to think of something else to talk about. While this is going, let's head back over to the web here. I also uploaded the new archive to archive.org. So you have three different options for download of my projects. You have for a long time, but for this particular project, EznixOS, based on Debian, we have archive.org with all of the files in one big archive. So both releases, the EznixOS11 and EznixOS12 release. I changed the numbering, obviously, to match Debian's release, 11 and 12. Those will stay throughout the life cycle of the releases, followed by a date-coded release, and then the architecture. So let's go back up here. Same with OSDN.net. Hopefully the documentation is accurate. And same with Sourceforge. I don't think we're too much closer. Yep, it's still going. See what we can do here while this is moving along. I went through some of the applications. Let's go through some more. So GNOME disk utility is here. That's probably my favorite way to write ISOs to USB media for booting, for testing. Let's see what else. Xarchiver for all your archived file needs. Development, we have Geany and Meld. Meld is great for comparing files and folder contents. Geany is my favorite, one of my favorite text editors. Games, the same games as always. Solitaire and DOSBox emulator. Graphics, we have Document Scanner, GIMP, gthumb, ImageMagick, Ristretto, and LibreOffice Draw. Internet, we have FileZilla, Firefox ESR, Ramina for remote desktop connections, transmission for BitTorrent. Multimedia, we have Asunder for CD ripping, Audacious, as I said before, GUVC View, MP3, MPV media player, Pulse audio volume control, simple screen recorder, SM player, sound converter, XFburn. Under Office, we have the Trill document viewer for PDFs, dictionary, HP fax software that came in with HPLIP, and the LibreOffice suite. Under Settings, all of the typical Xfce settings. And then System, GDebI, BleachBit, Easy Admin Tool. You can take a look at that actually. Now, if you run this on your installed system, it should ask for your password before launching, but in the live system, it goes right into it. So Debian, this was necessary with the Debian installer. It shouldn't be necessary now. Something to think of removing when I get the chance to redo it. Optimize sources. That's also something that the Calamares installer might take care of better than the Debian installer. We'll see. We'll see on the installed system whether this is even necessary anymore. Rebuild icon cache files. That may or may not be necessary with the Calamares installation. Install or upgrade Firefox latest. Now that's still useful. That grabs Firefox directly from Mozilla, puts it in the op directory, and creates a link in the user's menu for the latest Firefox, not the ESR version that comes with Debian. Install YTDLP video downloader. Install newest kernel from backports. That's useful if you want it. Upgrade the entire system to testing. That's still useful if you want it too. So Calamares might bring in some changes of not needing the first three options of my admin menu. Interesting. And X just gets you out of that. We're already at the bootloader installation stage. Cool. Let's take a look at the documentation again, or in a little more in-depth. So these are all the build files used that I build the system with. The actual script is right here. Let's open it with mousepad and make it bigger and turn on word wrap. So one of the changes I made was using these variables instead of specifying the file folder and the build directory in each instance and then having to edit that with each change. So the variables now are in one spot in the script right at the beginning, and then these are just referenced throughout. So in order to update the information, I change the variable and don't have to edit the entire script. Should have thought of this a long time ago. I mean, I did think of it. I never just got the energy to do the change. Once I've done it, though, it does make it easier to edit in the future. I sort of stripped down the statements here to just the bare minimum of what needed to be done. I noticed in my older build script there were some redundancies in folder creation and file copying that didn't need to be there. So this is just what needs to be done. Everything should be commented enough to give you a head start. The Xfce 4 folder contains a copy of the config files the way I like it set up to replicate the look and feel, and then this is transferred into the build. The sources, we'll see if they're really necessary anymore. It's when you run that easy admin script to optimize your sources. Scripts, all of the scripts placed in USR local bin that make up the easy admin menu. Live build manual, if you want to read the live build manual provided on the system itself. Documentation, some how-tos. All of the Calamares settings are right here. The branding. All of the backgrounds that are put into the backgrounds folder are all here too. Backgrounds make up the bulk of the 83 megabytes of this collection of build files. And we are all done. Cool. Let's go ahead and reboot. Now, one thing I've noticed is the Debian ISO takes a little while to eject from the virtual machine. Sometimes you do need to hit the enter key to actually tell VirtualBox to go ahead and reboot. Looks like we're at the grub menu of an installed system, not the live ISO. So the installation looks like it worked. Well, we're not in yet, but so far. VirtualBox is its own experience. It's very handy, but sometimes just introduces little problems. This iBus notification I noticed is popping up on every desktop start. It's just informational. It's not an error. It doesn't even apply because we're running Xfce and not Plasma in a Wayland session. Let's get to our monitor resolution here. There we go. So let's bring up a terminal here. Let's do an ls blk. And we can see the EFI system partition was mounted to boot EFI. Bar cache, home and log, and root are all separate subvolumes. Swap partition is here. Cool. Let's, what did I want to do? Let's cat out ETCFS tab. Okay, with this, there we go. We can see the FS tab was constructed just the way I wanted it. That's nice. What else was I thinking we wouldn't need to do? Let's run htop. Yeah, the memory use looks to be fine. We probably don't need to, let's see if we can. I'm sorry, I'm thinking while I'm filming. Shouldn't really do that. I should have all this planned and just do a script in front of the camera. I'm thinking optimize the rebuild the icon cache files, probably not necessary anymore. Oh, yes. Cat out etc apt sources list. So we can see deb main non-free. Okay, I still want to run my optimized sources. I don't like these sources the way they are. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do a sudo easy admin. Let's actually, we don't need sudo group anymore. We're already in it, but we do want to optimize the sources. Cool. And let's go ahead and rebuild the icon cache files. Why not? There are only about 5 or 6 icon cache files to rebuild, so it doesn't take that long. I can see a spelling mistake there. Or maybe not. Never mind. Okay. Let's go ahead, clear the screen. Look at the sources list now. That's what I want to see. I want to see main, contrib, non-free, and non-free firmware for Bookworm. And I don't need the sources, just the actual packages. Backports is there. Yes, so optimizing the sources, I still prefer my own to what Debian gives me. Okay, so I answered some of my questions. Hopefully it wasn't too much of a ramble there. Good to know. Hope you enjoy it. As always, this is the system how I like it set up. If it's how you like it set up, feel free to use it. If you want to adapt it to your own needs, go right ahead. All of the build files are right here. You just have to change it to how you want it. Take care, stay safe, have fun. Hope you enjoyed the video and hope it wasn't too long and boring for you. Bye-bye.